Thanksgiving night, my mom lifted her glass and toasted my sister. To the only child who ever made me proud. Everyone clapped. I stayed silent, ribs still aching from the chair Chloe had rammed into me just 10 minutes earlier. No one asked if I was okay, not when I fell, not when I limped away, and not even later that night when I ended up in the ER with 2 fractured ribs. My name wasn't even on the place card at the table. But you know what was? My work. My ideas. My voice woven into the very campaign that earned my mother her award. I'm Emily. And this is the story of how I stopped being the ghost in my own family and started dragging their secrets into the light. When I pulled into my parents' driveway in Fresno, the place was already packed. Cars lined the driveway like they belonged there. Mine didn't. It never mattered that I showed up on time, or that I always brought something homemade. Someone else would have taken the driveway. I'd be left circling the block. I parked 2 streets over, sat in the car for a moment and let my hands rest on the steering wheel. The porch light flickered faintly against the evening haze. I glanced at the pumpkin tart on the passenger seat still warm from the oven, straightened my coat, took a deep breath, then walked toward the house. The door opened before I even knocked. My mother Margot stood there in a crimson sweater dress, wine glass already in hand. She looked at me once quick, cool, then turned away. "Oh, you made it," she said, not stopping. I forced a smile and held up the tart. Made it from scratch. Thought I'd bring something a little different this year. She didn't even glance at it. "There's already plenty of dessert," she mumbled, disappearing toward the kitchen. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The living room buzzed with laughter. My aunt and uncle lounged near the fireplace. 2 cousins scrolled through their phones on the couch. And in the middle of it all was Chloe, my younger sister. Her voice brighter than the rest, her laugh perfectly timed, her outfit the exact shade of festive gold that made her look like she belonged on a magazine cover. She didn't see me at first, or maybe she did and chose not to. I hovered in the doorway, tart still in hand, wondering if I should join the group or just slip straight into the dining room. Nobody glanced up. Nobody paused. Finally, I walked into the kitchen and set the tart down beside 3 store-bought pies Chloe had probably grabbed that morning. "Dinner's ready," someone called, and like clockwork, everyone moved toward the dining room. I followed too, not because anyone asked me to, but because habit is hard to break. And then I froze. The table was breathtaking: crystal glasses, gold-rimmed plates, napkins folded into perfect shapes, all in shades of burnt orange and deep red. 12 chairs, each with a handwritten name card. I scanned once, then twice. No Emily. There was one for Chloe right beside my mother at the head of the table. One for Aunt Claire. One for Cousin Nick, who hadn't even shown up in 2 years. But nothing for me. No one noticed me standing there. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. My eyes landed on a metal folding chair leaning against the wall. I picked it up, dragged it to the far end of the table. The screech of its legs on the hardwood cut through the room, but no one flinched. I sat down, unfolded my napkin, and stayed quiet. It felt like sitting at a table you helped build only to realize everyone else thought you were just the caterer. Chloe called me in a panic. She said there was an opening at Glonnis Brands, but the position required a written proposal. For a rebranding campaign, she had no idea where to start. She said she knew I was good with strategy and tone, and maybe I could help just a little. I said sure. I spent 2 nights pouring myself into her idea, restructuring the flow, adding numbers that would impress, even building out a sample storyboard so she could picture it. When I finally sent her the draft, I expected, I don't know, at least a thank you, maybe a coffee, maybe even a text back. But nothing came. A month later, I saw her pop up on LinkedIn. New title: Senior Brand Strategist. The comments were endless: friends, family, coworkers all gushing over her. Even my mom chimed in. So proud of my brilliant girl. That's when it clicked. Helping her wasn't survival for me anymore, it was self-destruction. And I had to stop. I got up, cracked the window open, and let the night air hit my face. The scent of pine drifted in, along with the faint laughter rising from downstairs. I wondered if they'd already moved on to dessert, if anyone had noticed my chair sitting empty, if anyone even cared. Then a knock. Soft, hesitant. I braced myself for silence, maybe a quick "You okay?" from the other side. Instead, it was my dad. "You all right in there, Em?" he asked. I hesitated, then pulled the door open. He was standing there holding a folded blanket, like that could fix everything. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just needed a break." His eyes drifted past me, scanning the room like he could measure the damage himself. "They shouldn't have clapped," he finally said. I didn't respond, because it wasn't just about the clapping, it was about years of selective memory. All the times my existence was overlooked. He cleared his throat. "You know, I still have that article you wrote back in college. The one about women in tech." It was sharp. Strong. For a second I froze. I hadn't thought about that piece in forever. "Thanks," I whispered. He nodded, set the blanket down on the armchair and stepped back. "Let me know if you need anything." "I will." When he left, I just stood there staring at the door before drifting back to my bed. My phone lit up in my hand, and I pulled up Chloe's LinkedIn. Another update. Honored to lead another award-winning campaign. Grateful for my amazing team. No credit line. No mention of who had built the strategy. No trace of me at all. I closed the app and listened to the footsteps above me, the occasional bursts of laughter that broke through the night. I tried to remember the last time someone in this family had told me they were proud of me without comparing me to her. But nothing came. By morning, the smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee filled the house. Plates clinked, voices hummed, but no one had checked in on me since Dad. And honestly, I hadn't expected them to. That would mean they had to notice me. I dressed quietly and slipped into the kitchen. The dinner mess had been cleared, replaced with holiday mugs and breakfast trays. Chloe sat on a stool like she was starring in a lifestyle ad, legs crossed, sweater perfect, curls bouncing just right. She lifted her glass of orange juice with the same elegance she used for everything. Mom sat beside her, hanging on every word, nodding like Chloe was hosting a talk show. Aunt Claire leaned in, eyes wide. "And how did you land that client again?" Chloe smiled, voice smooth and polished. "Honestly, it was all about the story. GLONASS branding was outdated, very product-heavy. No soul. I pitched a shift toward purpose. Messaging focused on values, lifestyle, emotional connection." She spoke those words like she'd invented them. And I stood there in the background, coffee in hand, invisible. "That's what makes you so special," Margot said, eyes full of gleam. "You understand people, not just data or facts. But the story, that's what sets you apart." I took a sip of my coffee, bitter without cream. My mother had never used that tone with me, not once when I published my first case study on AI. Bias mitigation, she responded with a 2-word text. "Interesting stuff. Chloe uploads one brand campaign and gets treated like a prophet. We just wrapped a campaign last month that won the West Coast Emerging Brands Award." Chloe continued, "It was for a small skincare line, but we restructured their entire identity. Went from clean minimalist to earthy authenticity, and the growth triple-digit crazy." I blinked. Earthy authenticity, triple-digit growth, that was the phrase I had used in the deck I sent Chloe when she asked for help last spring. I remembered writing it out word for word. Staying up late to edit the color palette and rework her slide flow. I had added that tagline under brand tone suggestions. She had loved it, then said it sounded fresh and true, and now she was saying it again. Like it had always been hers. No one questioned it. "Wow," said cousin Rachel, "you're like a genius with this stuff." Chloe smiled modestly and turned slightly to look at me, almost like she remembered I existed. Her eyes paused on my plain gray sweater and undone hair, then shifted back. "I guess I just always had a feel for this," she said. "I mean, even in high school I could tell what people responded to. You either have it or you don't." That was directed at me. I felt it land like a thud in my stomach. Uncle Ted chimed in, cutting into his cinnamon roll. "I don't get half of what she's talking about, but she sure makes it sound like magic." "That's because it is," my mother said. I pushed my mug away. "What are you working on now, Emily?" Aunt Claire asked suddenly. It was almost jarring to hear my name spoken out loud. Everyone turned like I'd been reintroduced to the room. I shrugged. "I've been consulting on a few privacy infrastructure projects, mostly back-end systems for AI accountability and health tech." Silence. Chloe blinked. "That sounds intense." "It is," I said simply. Mom waved her hand. "She's always been the technical one. Very smart. She could fix anything around the house when she was a kid." Remember the way she said it? You'd think I had spent my childhood assembling IKEA furniture, not building the family website from scratch at 12. "She's always been good with computers," she added. "Chloe's more intuitive, more people savvy." And there it was again. The subtle carving of roles. Emily the background support, Chloe the public-facing marvel. One for utility, one for glory. Dad had entered the room during the exchange. but stood by the window saying nothing. He looked at me and offered a brief sad smile. I couldn't return it. The breakfast continued with laughter and second servings. I stayed quiet, chewing slowly, watching everyone orbit Chloe like she was the center of gravity. They laughed when she told a story about her flight getting delayed last month. They clapped when she mentioned mentoring a junior associate. They praised her for everything from her outfit to her insight. No one mentioned that she hadn't brought a dish, hadn't helped clean, hadn't offered anything beyond her polished presence. I had always told myself that being helpful mattered more than being seen, that the family would remember. The person who picked up the slack, handled the details, kept things running. But sitting there, watching Chloe soak up the warmth like sunlight, I realized something. Recognition doesn't come to those who work hardest. It comes to those who know where the spotlight hits, and Chloe had always known. I excused myself halfway through the meal, saying I had a call to return. No one looked up back in the guest room. I didn't make a call. I just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at that framed cross-stitch on the wall that said, "Family is everything." The irony almost made me laugh. The hallway light outside flickered, and I could still taste that bitter coffee on my tongue, mixed with all the sharp edges no one else seemed to notice. I didn't even know where I was going when I finally stepped out of the guest room. Maybe I just needed air. Or maybe I was hoping that if I walked far enough, I could step outside of myself for a minute. But when I turned the corner, I nearly bumped right into my dad. He was standing there in his house shoes and flannel pajama pants, holding a thin folder like it might burst into flames if he squeezed too hard. He didn't speak, just gave me a little nod. The kind that meant, "Follow me." We walked past the kitchen, quiet now. From the living room, I heard the low hum of the TV, probably on some football game no one was watching. Everyone was still digesting food, tension, hierarchy. Dad led me into the den. That room hadn't changed in decades. Same beige recliner with a blanket folded perfectly over the arm. Shelves of encyclopedias and ceramic birds. The old desk that once held my science fair trophies now buried under piles of unopened mail. He shut the door gently behind us, like he was sealing off a sinking ship. Then he handed me the folder. I didn't say anything, I just opened it. Inside were refinance documents dated 2022. My name in bold print. Co-owner. Responsible party. Lien cleared. There were also IRS notices, balances, and final payment confirmations, all neat, all filed. I looked up at him, breath caught in my throat. "How did you get these?" He sank into the recliner. "Found out a few months ago. Your mother tossed a county letter in the trash. It mentioned a payment that didn't come from either of us. I thought it was a bank error, until I saw the transfer receipt with your name on it." I exhaled, sharp and shaky. "You weren't supposed to know." "I know," he said softly. "And I think that's why it broke me." I sat on the edge of the chair, folder still open on my lap. "You should have said something." He nodded, eyes on the floor. "I didn't know how. I didn't want to start another fight in this house. I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe you were okay being quiet too. But last night I saw it on your face. You're not okay." I stayed silent. He rubbed his hands together, fingers rough from years of work nobody ever thanked him for. "I guess we're alike that way," he murmured. "We thought keeping everything running was enough." My voice came out lower than I meant. "It was never enough." He didn't argue, just nodded again. "You saved this house, Emily. And we let you sit through dinner like you were just a guest. I don't know how to make that right." I looked at him, really looked. More gray around his temples. Eyes tired from time and words unsaid. "I never wanted credit," I whispered. "But I also never wanted to be erased." "You weren't," he said softly. "I saw you. I see you." Then he pulled out another paper from the folder. Not a copy, an original. A deed amendment with a notary seal. My name listed as joint legal owner. His signature already there. "6 weeks ago," he said, "I went to Jade. I wanted to do this right with advice, not emotion. It's legal. Binding. Overdue." I traced the edge of the paper with my fingers. "Why now?" "Because I'm tired of watching you carry everything and getting nothing back. Because I should have spoken up years ago. And because I know your mother won't like it, which probably means it's the right thing to do." His mouth twitched, a dry attempt at a smile. I laughed, bitter and quiet. "She'll go nuclear." He leaned back. "She already is." Silence fell between us. Not awkward. The kind you earn after holding your breath too long. Finally, he cleared his throat. You don't have to say anything today or this weekend. But when you're ready, they should know the truth. And I'll be there. You're not doing this alone. The air shifted. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear those words. That someone would finally stand beside me. I nodded. Okay. He stood, opened the door, then turned back. You always thought you were the quiet one. But you were the backbone. And then he left me alone with the papers that proved it. I sat there not smiling, not crying. Just breathing. Like it mattered again. The house had settled into that strange stillness that comes after a big meal, when everyone thinks the day is over. But I knew better. It hadn't even started. The hallway stretched out, every step echoing louder than it should have. I didn't run. Didn't cry. Didn't even hold my side, though my body begged me to. I just walked, like maybe if I moved fast enough, the pain wouldn't catch me. But it did. Halfway back to the guest room, it bloomed sharp and hot in my ribs. Not the kind of ache that fades. The kind that stays. I pressed my hand against it, felt the swelling under my palm. My breathing went shallow. I made it to the bathroom, turned on the light, and lifted my shirt. The bruise was already spreading a deep purple blooming across my side where the chair had hit me. I inhaled, and pain flared even sharper. I knew this pain. Years ago, I fractured a rib falling off a bike in the rain. It took weeks to heal. This was worse. No ice. No apology. No arm around me. Nothing. Just Chloe's narrowed eyes and my mother's glass raised like a gavel downstairs. I could hear the silverware clinking again. Someone turned the television volume up. It was all going back to normal, like nothing had happened. I leaned over the sink, bracing myself with both hands, and let my head drop forward. Then something shifted inside me, not a rip but something deeper. There was a moment between silence and rage that I hadn't visited before, a space where the pain didn't ask for sympathy, and the injustice no longer shocked. It was the edge of enough. I stood upright, caught my reflection in the mirror, and barely recognized the woman staring back, not because I looked broken, but because I didn't look afraid anymore. I returned to the room, picked up my phone again, and this time I opened the Uber app. I wasn't going to sit here and wait for someone to notice I was hurt. I wasn't going to beg for a place at a table I helped build. 5 minutes later, headlights spilled across the driveway. I didn't say goodbye, I didn't leave a note, I just walked out cradling my side. Teeth clenched against every bump in the road. The driver was a middle-aged man named Robert. And he didn't ask questions. He glanced once in the mirror, then kept his eyes on the road. Maybe he sensed something in my posture, and the way I winced when I buckled my seatbelt. Fresno Memorial, I said quietly. You got it. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and tired holiday decorations. A nurse handed me a clipboard. I scribbled my name, birthdate, symptoms. How did the injury occur? Accidental impact from chair, cause family dispute. They brought me back faster than I expected. An X-ray technician named Lila helped me onto the table, her voice calm and practiced. You're not the first Thanksgiving patient tonight, she said gently. Food poisoning, carving knife mishaps. Even a cousin fight over pumpkin pie. Families get weird this time of year. I smiled weakly. This wasn't weird. This was years of tension finally breaking through the skin. After the scans, the doctor came in. His name was Dr. Reed, mid-50s, glasses smudged but eyes kind. You've got 2 fractured ribs on the lower left side, he said. Clean breaks but painful. We'll get you some meds and a wrap for support. No heavy lifting, no sudden movements. And you'll need rest, lots of it. I nodded, lips pressed tight. He didn't ask how it happened. He didn't need to. I think he already knew by the time I left with a bottle of painkillers and a printout of aftercare instructions. It was past midnight. The Uber ride back to my apartment was silent. I didn't check my phone. I didn't expect any messages at home. I moved slowly, carefully, into the dark living room and sat on the couch. The silence here was different. It didn't press against my skin like it did in my parents' house. It didn't erase me. I leaned back, closed my eyes and breathed through the pain, and in that moment I knew this was the last time I would let them write the story without me in it. The apartment was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the ceiling above me. I sat curled on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket I hadn't touched in months. The bottle of painkillers on the coffee table within reach. My breath came shallow and careful, like my lungs were afraid to expand too far. Every small movement sent a ripple through my side, reminding me that what happened back there wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. One made in plain view and followed by silence. I reached for my phone again, more from habit than purpose. No new texts, no missed calls, just Chloe's story still sitting at the top of my screen like a slap. I opened the post again, even though I already knew what I'd see. Chloe, glowing under the chandelier, mid-toast. Her smile stretched wide, her arm wrapped around Mia, their glasses clinking in the air. The caption read, "Thankful for the vision." That word vision cut deeper than the chair she slammed into me earlier. Because that was mine. My word. My idea. I used it last year when I reworked her campaign deck, the same one that scored her that Glowna Steel deal. She didn't create it, she dressed it up. Took something I had built, polished it, and wore it like it was hers all along. And now here she was, raising her glass, celebrating my vision as if it had always belonged to her. I set the phone down and just stared at the ceiling, wondering when I stopped feeling like a daughter in this house, and started feeling more like a shadow in the background. When was the last time anyone asked how I was without immediately comparing me to Chloe? I couldn't remember. Maybe back when I was 8, holding that blue ribbon from the county-wide math competition. I ran into the kitchen, beaming, heart-pounding, ribbon in hand. Mom was on the phone, slicing apples. She glanced at me and said, "That's nice, sweetheart. Don't forget to rinse the dishes." The next year, Chloe got cast as a tree in her 3rd grade play. Mom made flyers. She even wore a t-shirt with Chloe's face on it to the performance. That night I told myself being useful was better than being seen. That maybe love didn't need to be loud to be real. But tonight I finally understood. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes silence slices sharper than words ever could. I pushed myself off the couch and walked to the kitchen. The wood floor was cool under my feet. I poured a glass of water, swallowed another pill, and leaned against the counter, watching the digital clock blink. 12:44 a.m. Thanksgiving was technically over, but it didn't feel done. It felt cracked open, like the day had spilled something none of us knew how to put back together. My phone buzzed again. A text from Dad. "Just got back from walking the dog. I saw Chloe's story. Are you really okay?" I stared at that message for a long time. I just typed back one word. Number. My chest burned where her elbow had landed. Pretty sure at least 2 ribs were cracked. Then his reply popped up. He was typing. "Do you need me?" I should have said yes. I should have let him show up. But I couldn't. Not if he was going to walk in carrying Mom's version of the story in his back pocket. So I told him, "Not tonight." He sent one more line. "She never should have touched you. I should have stepped in. I'm sorry." That word sorry. It hit me like both nothing and everything at the same time. I didn't know if I could forgive him, not yet. But still it mattered. I eased myself back onto the couch, lowering slow like an old woman. The pillow felt a little less strange this time. My ribs ached, but the pain had settled in, almost like it was choosing to stay for a while. Underneath it though, something steady had rooted itself in the silence. Something that wasn't going anywhere. I grabbed my phone, not to scroll or distract myself but to open my notes. New file. Title for the record. First line, Thanksgiving 2023. Chloe broke 2 of my ribs. Mom laughed. That's all I wrote, but it was a start. Not forgiveness. Not healing. Just truth. And sometimes truth is the only weapon you have when no one else will speak it out loud. The ER was almost too quiet, just the steady beeping of a monitor. I was half reclined on a gurney, ribs bound tight, gown hanging loose. The 4 in my arm dripped a slow rhythm while the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, November was at its coldest hour. Dark still, the kind of night where the world feels paused and you can actually hear your own heartbeat. The doctor's words kept looping in my head. 2 fractures, no displacement, deep bruising. Breathe shallow. Sleep upright. No lifting. Rest. Rest, like that was even possible. Every tiny shift hurt. Even pulling the blanket higher was slow, deliberate. The meds hadn't kicked in yet, and my body felt like it was both too heavy and too hollow at the same time. Staring up at those beige ceiling tiles, I started thinking about everything I'd never said. Not just tonight, years of words swallowed down. Memories so old they barely felt like mine anymore. And yet here they were, rising up in the silence. A nurse peeked in, soft voice, kind eyes. "How's the pain?" I forced a thin smile. "Manageable." She adjusted my fore, gave me a nod and left me alone again. Then my phone buzzed. The name lit up and my stomach twisted. Sienna. She had always been the middle ground between me and Chloe, never choosing sides. Her text read, "I just saw what happened. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say." Another buzz. "But I need to tell you something. That proposal Chloe submitted last spring, the one that won her the award, it looked almost exactly like the deck you sent me in January. First I thought it was a coincidence. Now I feel sick." And a third. "I didn't say anything then. I didn't want to get in the middle. But I should have. I'm sorry." My hands shook as I read them again and again. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just neglect. It was theft. Proof that Chloe had taken my work, my ideas, my voice and worn them like her own. I opened my notes app again. Line 2. March 2023. Chloe stole my proposal and submitted it as hers. Confirmed by Sienna. Then I typed one more. This isn't just about family anymore. Because it wasn't. It never really had been. It was about erasure, about being the bones that held up someone else's building, while being told I was lucky to even stand near it. The nurse eventually came back with discharge papers. I signed, refused the wheelchair, stupid pride, and winced my way out into the cold. The air outside cut against my cheeks, but it was cleaner than anything in that house. Waiting for my ride, I reread Sienna's last text. I should have said something. My fingers typed slow, deliberate, "You still can." Then I turned off my phone, slid into the Uber, and let the city lights blur past me like promises already broken. The driver said nothing and I was grateful. My ribs throbbed, but the deeper pain was tucked somewhere else, unreachable. When I finally walked into my apartment, silence met me at the door like an old friend. I kicked off my shoes, eased onto the couch, every move careful, calculated. The glow of my phone lit the room again. And there it was, a message I didn't expect. From Noah Daniels. I stared at the name, unsure if I should open it. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since he and I quietly let go of the almost relationship we never fully defined. He'd moved to San Diego for work. I'd buried myself in freelance projects and deadlines. His message was simple. "Hey, hope I'm not overstepping. Something came up today that I think you should see." My stomach nodded. He followed up almost immediately. "I was in a leadership review with Chloe." She showed a recap of the Glowness campaign. "One of the decks looked really familiar, like something you showed me once." I read the line again, then again. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't coincidence. It was happening. My fingers trembled as I typed back. "I still have the original. I built that deck in January for a pitch I was working on with a health tech nonprofit." His reply came quickly. "That tracks. I remember your mock-up, the triangle structure, the emotional journey slide. It's almost identical. Chloe changed the fonts and added product photos, but the rest? It's yours." I swallowed hard. I knew it. I had always known it. But knowing something and hearing it confirmed by someone inside the room, someone with nothing to gain, those were two different kinds of pain. Then came the next message. At a company lunch a while back, she made a joke about it. Said something like, "Emily helped with half of it, not that anyone needs to know." I thought she was just being flippant. I didn't realize it was literal. My breath caught in my throat. "Do you still have that deck you showed me? With the metadata?" "Yes," I typed. "And I have the email I sent myself with the timestamp. Everything is backed up." He waited a moment before responding. "If you want to use it, you could. For the record, for yourself. It would stand up. I don't know what you plan to do. But I'm here if you need someone to back the story up." I blinked. My chest tightened, not from the fracture this time, but from something deeper. Not grief, not anger, permission. I hadn't asked for it, but there it was, quiet, unexpected. And it didn't come from family or obligation. It came from someone who remembered me before I became invisible. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I opened my files, scanned through the folders labeled Q1 Strategy, Client Drive, AFT's Brandwork Reference. The original proposal sat untouched, its metadata untouched since January 14th. I double-checked the email trail, my name, my edits, my notes. There it was. A blueprint with my fingerprints on every line. Then, as if summoned by the sheer weight of truth, a notification lit up the top of my screen. Industry Wire. "Congratulations to Chloe Carson. nominee for this year's National Media Vision Award. I clicked through. There she was, centered in a glowing graphic, smiling wide. Her bio listing Glowness campaign as her independent vision, praising her for disruptive storytelling and original strategy. The bio rose before I could stop it. It was no longer just a stolen sentence or a borrowed slide. She had built a public identity on top of my work, and now the world was applauding. I stared at the image, heart pounding. 1,000 thoughts swirled. How she would justify it if asked, how our mother would defend her, how many people had sat across from her as she spun my voice into hers. I opened a new note on my phone and typed, November 25, 2023. Khloe Carson nominated for National Award using a deck I built alone. Confirmed by CTO. Acknowledged in private. Erased in public. Then I stared at the blinking cursor. There are moments when silence is noble, and there are moments when silence is complicity. I wasn't noble anymore, and I was done being complicit. The sky was overcast as I pulled into the driveway of the house I used to call home. The November chill clung to the windows, casting everything in a grayish hue. I parked behind Khloe's spotless white SUV, its polished bumper catching the weak sunlight like it had something to prove. In the passenger seat beside me sat a slim manila folder. Inside was everything. Printouts from the refinance agreement, documentation from the IRS payment, and a notarized letter from Jade confirming my legal co-ownership of the house. I'd asked her to draft it last night after I finally admitted how much had gone unspoken. She hadn't hesitated. I grabbed the folder with my left hand, keeping my right close to my side. The pain meds dulled the sharpness in my ribs, but the stiffness reminded me I hadn't healed, not from the chair, not from anything. I rang the doorbell. A beat passed before my father opened the door. He didn't smile, just stepped aside and said, "Come in." Inside, the air felt thick, the kind of heaviness that settles before a storm. Khloe was at the kitchen counter, sipping a smoothie like nothing had happened. My mother stood at the head of the dining table, arms crossed, her mouth tight with anticipation. I walked in without speaking. I didn't greet anyone. I didn't remove my coat. I simply placed the folder on the table, opened it slowly, and slid the papers forward until they stopped in front of Margot. Her lips curled slightly as she glanced down. "What is this?" "Read it," I said. She didn't move. My father cleared his throat and took a step closer. "It's documentation from the refinance," he said. "From when Emily paid off the lien last year. She's on the deed. She's not asking to be on it, she already is." My mother's eyes snapped to his. "You did this behind my back?" "You left the paperwork to me," he replied, voice steady. "You didn't want to be bothered with the logistics, so you signed the power of attorney. Jade handled the filings. Everything was legal." Margot's mouth opened, but no words came. I pulled out the second document, a printed statement confirming my payment to the IRS, dated and signed by the tax officer who processed it. "That's the money I used to protect the house," I said. "My savings. $14,328. Paid in full last February." Khloe set her smoothie down a little too hard. The glass clinked against the counter. "You never said anything," she muttered. "You never asked." My mother's face flushed, but not with shame, with rage. "So what now? You want to take the whole place? Rip it from under your sister's feet? You've always resented her. That's what this is really about." I stared at her, then slid the final envelope across the table. It held a copy of Dad's newly signed will. "He's giving me 70% his share. Not because I asked, because I earned it." Richard stepped forward then, shoulders squared. "I made that decision, Margot, after everything. After what I heard you say to Nancy about selling the house, about not needing to tell me until the papers were signed." Her head snapped toward him. "You were spying on me?" "I recorded it," he said simply. "You didn't know I was home. You thought I was out walking the dog, but I heard the entire conversation. About the condo near Linda. About keeping my name off the listing. You said the house was more hassle than it was worth." Her jaw tightened. "I was just venting." "No," he cut in firm. "You were planning." The air shifted, the whole room going still. He turned toward me. "Emily isn't taking anything away," he said, steady. "She's saving it. The only reason this house still belongs to us is because she stepped up when no one else would." Chloe's face crumpled like she wanted to vanish. Mom inhaled, sharp and heavy, and her anger landed right back on me. You always play the victim, she hissed. Like the world is trying to erase you. Maybe the truth is you were never meant to be the center. I didn't look away. I never wanted to be the center, I said quietly. I just wanted to be seen. Her eyes flickered. Once. Twice. Then she sank into her chair, silent for the first time in what felt like forever. The silence stretched, not the kind that begged someone to break it, but the kind that pressed a mirror to everyone's face and forced them to look. I stayed on my feet not out of pride, but because I didn't trust my legs if I sat down. Chloe's fingers twitched on the counter beside her half-melted smoothie. Dad stayed still, not angry, not triumphant, just exhausted. But beneath it there was relief. Like someone who had finally set down a weight they'd been carrying too long. You always said this house mattered, Emily, he said softly. I didn't get it before. Now I do. It's not the walls, it's the people willing to keep them standing. My throat tightened. Chloe looked at me differently then. No sharpness, no edge. Just confusion, maybe even guilt. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. It was just easier when nobody questioned me. I gave one small nod. That was the most honest thing I'd heard from her in years. Mom stayed quiet, her eyes locked on the folder like she could burn holes through it. Maybe in her mind she already had. I turned toward the hallway, stepped steady even though my body felt unsteady inside. I didn't slam a door or throw out a last word. The point had already been made. At the doorway, Dad's voice stopped me. Emily. I paused. Don't disappear, he said. Not from this house. Not again. I didn't promise. I didn't nod. I just pulled the door closed softly behind me. I didn't leave for good, not yet. Hours later, the lights were still on when I looked from the car. Shadows moved behind the curtains, but there was no laughter, no clinking of glasses. The air inside had changed. I stepped out, envelope still heavy in my pocket, and walked back up to the front door. No one came to open it. I let myself in. The room fell silent the moment I entered. Even the cousins, who usually pretended not to notice drama, stared right at me. This silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was bracing. I moved past the dining table toward the living room. Mom sat stiff on the recliner's armrest, lips pursed, arms locked across her chest. Chloe was pale, glassy-eyed, sunk into the couch. Dad stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back. Aunt Nancy's voice cut through first. I need to say this now while everyone's here. Heads turned. She looked straight at Mom. I wasn't going to get involved, but I can't sit here pretending. Margot told me herself she was looking at condos near me. She said not to tell Richard, that it would be easier if Emily found out too late to stop it. I didn't react. I just stood there while her words dropped like weights into every corner of the room. Chloe exhaled, shaky. She told me to sign papers last fall. Said it was just insurance stuff. Said Emily would blow it out of proportion. I didn't even understand what I was signing. I just trusted her. Mom's face twisted, but she stayed silent. Dad finally spoke. His voice was steady, clear. Do you all see it now? He pointed at me. This woman, my daughter, is the reason we still have this home. She cleared the lean. She stood with me when I couldn't walk. She kept this family from falling apart while the rest of us looked away. The room froze. I pulled out my phone and tapped play. I debated it, but the moment for holding back was gone. Chloe's voice filled the room. She basically helped write the whole thing. She's so good with numbers and making it work. I just tweaked it, but no one really needs to know that. I mean, Emily doesn't even care about credit. There was faint laughter in the background of the recording, then silence in the real room. Chloe's eyes filled, her mouth opening, closing. I didn't think you'd keep that. I looked straight at her. I always keep receipts. Dad looked down at the floor, then back up at my mother. Do you have anything to say, Margot? She stood abruptly, the legs of the chair screeching. So we're just turning on me now? After everything I've done? Dad didn't move. What you've done, Margot, is lie, manipulate, pit one child against the other so you could preserve the illusion that Chloe was the golden one and Emily was just an accessory. But Emily was the one who carried the burden, and she didn't do it for applause. She did it because none of us would. You don't know everything, she hissed. You're right, he said. I didn't. That was the problem. I took a slow breath. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about credit. It's about truth. I'm not the villain because I refused to stay invisible. I'm not selfish because I didn't want to watch this house the house I saved get sold behind my back. Chloe buried her face in her hands. Aunt Linda looked away. One uncle coughed into his fist. Dad stepped closer to me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. I made some changes. This is a new will. Jade helped me draft it yesterday. He handed it to me. I didn't unfold it, not yet. You don't have to read it now, he said. But I wanted you to have it. 70% of the house will go to you. Not because you asked, but because you earned it. My mother scoffed. You're going to punish Chloe for what? Being younger? Being better with people. No one flinched, not even Chloe. This isn't punishment, Dad said. It's correction. Mom blinked once, twice, but she didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked out of the room. This time, no one followed her. I looked around at the rest of the room, at every face that once turned away when I entered. Some looked ashamed. Some looked broken. But no one was clapping anymore. I sat down in the middle of the couch, straight-backed, hands folded in my lap. This time, no one asked me to move. I stayed in that chair for a long time. People started clearing their plates and folding up napkins. No one looked at me with pity anymore. No one dared to. I wasn't the invisible one tonight. I wasn't the sister in the corner, the overlooked daughter, the tech girl with quirks. I was the one who had kept everything from breaking apart even as I was breaking. Dad handed me a second envelope before I left, this one thicker, older, with slight creases along the edges. It's the original title, he said. I want you to have it. I should have given it to you last year. I just wasn't ready to admit I'd failed you too. You didn't fail, I said. You just followed the silence like everyone else. His eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. He squeezed my shoulder instead. Outside, the air had turned sharper. Fresno nights always dipped colder than you expected for California. I was halfway down the steps when I heard the door creak again. Emily, wait. It was Chloe. She didn't come running. She didn't perform the kind of dramatic apology that earned sympathy online. She just walked to the top of the porch steps and stood there, arms tucked across her chest. I don't know how to come back from this, she said, voice low. I turned and looked up at her. Then don't come back. Start somewhere different. She swallowed. I didn't know Mom was trying to sell the house like that. I didn't know about the lien. I knew some things, but not everything. You knew enough to stop pretending, I said. She nodded, lips pressed tight. I don't think I'm proud of anything anymore. Then maybe that's where you start. She blinked at me, her eyes finally free of all the curated sparkle. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. I know. The words didn't hit me like an explosion or a slap. They just landed soft, steady, real. We stood there in that silence, not the kind that begs for someone to perform, but the kind that carries weight. I didn't forgive her. I didn't hand out some clean slate. But I also didn't walk away. She went back inside the house. I walked toward my car. When I got home, I dropped my coat over the chair and opened my laptop. The folder Jade had helped me put together was already waiting on my desktop: drafts, emails, timestamps, even that voice memo of Chloe bragging to Noah. Sienna's email was in there too, proving she'd seen my slides long before Chloe turned them into her award-winning original. I attached it all bundled into one neat folder. Then I pulled up the GLONASS communications site. There it was, a little tab that read Report Ethics Concern. I clicked. My hands were steady. I typed, "To whom it may concern, please find attached documents supporting a claim of submission misconduct." The award-winning proposal credited to Chloe Carson contains excerpts from my original work. Proof includes dated drafts, emails, and audio evidence of uncredited collaboration. I request an internal review. Sincerely, Emily Carson. I hit send. No sparks, no drama, just truth, finally placed where it belonged. 20 minutes later, an auto reply came through. Thank you for your submission. Our compliance and ethics team will initiate a formal investigation. You may be contacted for verification. No fireworks. No headlines. Just precision. And sometimes that's all justice really needs. I leaned back and stared at the screen until it dimmed. The next morning another message came. Thank you, Miss Carson, for your detailed documentation. We have initiated a formal inquiry as of November 25th. Updates will follow. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. That afternoon, I wandered to the cafe down the street. Old wood tables, soft jazz, a few people sipping coffee. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, watching strangers pass by bundled in scarves, laughing, carrying leftovers home. Nobody knew the version of me from yesterday, the one dragging folding chairs behind everyone else, trying to make herself small. And for the first time, that anonymity felt like freedom. Halfway through my cup, my phone buzzed. Dad. Just wanted to say again how proud I am, not just for what you did last night, but for how long you've carried this in silence. I see it now.